Hello, and thank you very much again for coming along this evening. This evening we are very privileged once again to have a candidate for the Cambridge City Council come along and talk with us and answer some questions perhaps, and also elaborate on the themes and platform points that make his campaign the most compelling. So we're going to turn it over to him very shortly, and in fact look at the whole question of what the platform would be for a candidate that has this kind of exposure and this kind of experience. Our concern is to ask the kinds of questions that any citizen of Cambridge would ask, and we'll look at it in terms of his own platform that he's developed for us. So, without further ado, we'll turn it over to Quinton Zondervan, who has emphasize the themes of climate justice and racial equity, and can tell us more about that in great detail as we go through the evening's session. Quinton.
Thank you.
Speak right ahead to the camera and tell us what it is that you're up to.
My name is Quinton Zondervan. I'm a Cambridge City Councilor and candidate for re-election on November 5th. And I'm here today to speak with Tim about climate justice and racial equity.
Well, you can get a sense of his program from what he's put out in various campaign literature, but he's a Cambridge City Councilor already and proud immigrant from Suriname. He's been at the forefront of the climate movement in Cambridge for more than a decade, and also has prioritized tenant protections, racial equity, bicycle safety, among other things, including the protection of Cambridge itself. Some of the topics he touches upon are quite interesting.
So we have a climate crisis, and it's important that as we take action on climate change, that we do so in a way that protects our most vulnerable community members. And that's one of the reasons that I've prioritized tree canopy protection in my first term, because what we find in Cambridge is that the tree canopy is the thinnest in our densest and poorest neighborhoods. And trees are really important to protect us from heat and flooding. That is part of the impacts of climate change that we face. It also has a racial equity component to that story, because some of the neighborhoods that are the most vulnerable also traditionally are the neighborhoods where our black community and immigrant communities live in Cambridge. And simultaneously, as they're facing the risks of climate change, they're also dealing with a housing crisis where the rents are going up and housing becomes unaffordable to residents who've been living here for many, many years. So we have to prioritize housing justice at the same time. And again, all of these issues are connected. When we talk about bicycle safety, again, using a bicycle to get around Cambridge is a very accessible and affordable mode of transportation. But in order for that to really flourish, we have to make sure that we protect the safety of people riding bikes and of course pedestrians as well. And that means putting in place more bike lanes and lowering the speed limits and things like that. And of course, no city councilor works alone, and so this year I'm running with a team of candidates who are all values aligned and who seek these same priorities.
Well, we'll be looking at that team a little later. You actually gave a picture of some of the people who were also on the team, but if you haven't seen it yet, you should see his major placard, and you'll probably see it around Cambridge from time to time between now and Election Day, and now you know what to respond to. This is a picture of Quinton, and you tell us this, Quinton.
Well, this is a picture of me and my daughter, who is now a student at Columbia University in New York City, and this summer had the opportunity to join her for Suriname Day, which has been celebrated in Queens, New York since 1976, the year after the independence of Suriname from the Netherlands. It was a Dutch colony formerly. And so it was a wonderful opportunity to share my heritage with her in a celebratory way in New York City. And this is a picture of me joining the Sunrise Movement in support of a Green New Deal at Congresswoman Catherine Clark's office last year. And this is really an important element of climate justice, is to make sure that we are creating the kinds of jobs that will both help us address the climate crisis and give economic opportunity to communities that have been traditionally left out from our economy. So we were at Congresswoman Clark's office to ask her to sign on to the Green New Deal, which she did.
Very good. If we have any luck, we're hoping to get someone from the Green New Deal and more specifically the Sunrise Movement to interview next week, just before the election.
Wonderful. And I should mention that I'm endorsed by Sunrise Boston as well. This is a picture of the Green Cambridge Hurley Street neighborhood farm, which we were able to create 3 years ago. I was the leader of Green Cambridge at that time. And this is a wonderful small demonstration farm in East Cambridge. And any community member can join the farm and just go over there and enjoy the beautiful outdoor space and enjoy the vegetables, help out with learning how to grow. And it's just a great community space. We're wrapping up our third growing season right now.
Is it a CSA, a community-supported agricultural farm, where you can buy shares, or?
No, it's a communal farm, so anyone
see.
can walk in and participate. Any extra produce that we produce, it's a very small farm, but we do produce a little bit of excess sometimes, and we donate that to the local schools and nonprofit organizations for their benefit.
How many people are involved in it?
So the executive director of Green Cambridge, Stephen Nutter, oversees the entire organization, and then we usually have a volunteer farm manager. And then, community members come and go, but we've already had hundreds of people participate over the last 3 years in various ways.
What about school children or high school kids who want to learn something more about urban farming?
Absolutely. We have the kids over there. They come from the Kennedy Longfellow School, which is nearby. We've had the high school students over. So that's definitely part of our regular programming.
Well, this is a very important chapter of things, because in effect we're going to have cities that learn how to feed themselves in the coming dispensation. We're so dependent on fossil fuels at this point, we can't even think of a non-petroleum carrot.
Right.
But we're going to have to learn how to grow it here in Massachusetts. Well,
so these are a couple of friends of mine, former Mayor Ken Reeves and Cambridge City Council candidate Nicola Williams. And this is a picture of us at the rally in support of the Cambridge Carnival, which was canceled for the first time in 27 years. And that is, quite a shock to the Caribbean and Black community in Cambridge that happened. And so I was the only councillor who really supported the carnival and asked some really hard questions, why it was being canceled and what we can do to make sure that the community members are made whole, because a lot of people had invested a lot of time and money in preparation for this event. And later this fall, I'll be having a committee hearing on making sure that Carnival 2020 will take place and that all carnivals will take place henceforth.
very good. Well, it's usually a very colorful carnival. I have no idea why it was canceled, but in any case, it's usually quite an event.
Yeah, unfortunately, we had some threats made against the event.
Oh.
But we should be able to find a way to protect ourselves from that.
I see. Well, you should be able to find his detailed biography out of Transition Studies easily enough. Just click on it, and you can read about it. His years of experience, especially in things like the Climate Protection Action Committee, CPAC as it's called over here in Cambridge, where he was an active member for years. And in fact, as he mentioned, in Green Cambridge as well, a 501c3 corporation here that is running the farm that we just take a look at. But please do get in touch with his bio. He even is bold enough to put his email link on there. And that's in itself quite a distinguishing factor for a public servant.
And my cell phone number.
And the cell phone number too.
Absolutely.
I didn't want to publicize that, but if you're willing to acknowledge that, you could get a lot of phone calls.
I look forward to them. I love engaging with constituents.
Okay, well, the effort here is fairly easy to get through to. In other words, all you have to do is get on to Transition Studies and look up Quinton. In fact, you can put it in the search engine, and it'll probably be the only thing that comes up, unless I've got a few things in there from Quinton Marsalis.
That's Winton.
And Winton himself.
Yeah.
But occasionally it's misspelled.
Right.
And Winton is in town from time to time over at Harvard giving things, but I understand your wife is teaching over at Harvard too.
That's right. She's a faculty member in computer science.
Right. Well, among other things, you'll learn about the role he's had in the Cambridge Protection Action Committee, and we could ask him a bit more about that. How does that function? What is it? What does it do?
So in 2008, I became aware of this committee as they were looking for new members, and I applied, and I served on it for 9 years, 3 years as the chair. And when I first joined the committee, I was asked what aspect of climate change I wanted to work on. And I said, well, we really need to do more about adaptation, as we called it back then. Now it's called resilience and preparedness. So the city agreed and conducted a vulnerability assessment to figure out what our main vulnerabilities are to climate change. And surprise, surprise, the conclusion is heat and flooding. So we are now transitioning into a preparedness planning phase. But the role of the committee really is to oversee our climate policy for the city as a whole. And back in 2013, I filed a zoning petition with now State Rep Mike Connolly on net zero buildings. And the city formed a task force, and we created the Net Zero Action Plan in 2015 that was adopted by the City Council, and the Climate Protection Action Committee at that time, under my leadership, then took on the role of oversight for that Net Zero Action Plan to make sure that we are executing the plan and getting our building emissions in Cambridge to zero. 80% of our climate change emissions in Cambridge are from our building operations, so it's really important that we get those emissions down to zero. So that committee plays a very important role in advising the city manager on climate change policy and involving the stakeholders, including the residents, of course, as well as the business community, MIT, Harvard, and all the major stakeholders in executing our climate policy in Cambridge.
And you can get access to their documents, because one of the other things that Quinton made sure was happening was that this committee not just be a committee that writes reports for itself, but actually posts them on the web and gets them out to the community. So community activists from all sectors and from all sections within Cambridge. In fact, there was a series of studies that were done on different portions of Cambridge,
Right.
looking at how climate change was going to affect East Cambridge and North Cambridge. And
Right. Yeah, that was part of the climate vulnerability assessment, and these are all public documents that are indeed available on the city's website for all to use, and similarly with the Net Zero Action Plan, that's all available on the website for anyone in the community or from other communities to look at and benefit from.
well, it's interesting you mentioned that from other communities, because in fact other communities have logged on to the Cambridge site
Absolutely.
a lot, and they've used it as a kind of model for
Right.
organizing themselves, or at least asking the questions that we ask of ourselves in Cambridge to see if what applies to their communities. I know Newton, for example, has regarded this Climate Protection Action Committee as very important as a way of guiding their own thinking on these kinds of things, and I think several other suburban areas have as well.
Right. In fact, after we did the Net Zero Action Plan, former Mayor Henrietta Davis and myself went on a bit of a speaking tour in neighboring communities to support activists in those communities who wanted to develop similar plans. And they have done so now in Lexington, in Concord, and in Boston. They're working on a net zero action plan of sorts as well.
How do you like that? We're even in front of the revolutionary communities of Lexington and Concord.
That's right.
And taking the revolution to a new level here, giving it new meaning. And in fact, he's even looked across the river at Boston, because CABA, as it's called, the Climate Action Business Association, is based in Boston, but he's been an active member of this. Can you tell us a little bit more about this as well?
Yes, in fact, I co-founded the Climate Action Business Association with Susan LeBandebar, another Cambridge resident and Boston business owner. And at the time, I was in business myself and wanted to find a way for business leaders to be more active on climate change in the right way, because of course very often businesses are involved
Very
in the wrong
active in
way.
the wrong way.
And we now have over 120 member businesses, and we've since merged with Climate Exchange, so it's now a program of Climate Exchange. But we primarily advocate for a price on carbon, we both in Massachusetts, where that legislation has advanced, and in the previous session was voted on by the Massachusetts Senate, and so this term we're hoping to get it through the House. But we also have developed a nationwide network of activists in every state in the country to advocate for a price on carbon in their state, because obviously currently at the moment it's pretty hopeless to get a price on carbon at the federal level, but if we can get a few states to move in that direction, we can build up to a national policy in the future.
Right, and all you need to do is go to their website and you can see some of the drama involved in thinking about climate change in Boston, realizing that there are two banks to the river, Charles River. You can look at Cambridge from over on the Boston side, as this graphic does, and it simulates sea level rise, which, if we leave ourselves unprotected, will look very much like New Orleans did in 2005. As it turns out, if you had a strong hurricane of a Category 3 or above that hit Boston, it would very likely overtop the Charles River Dam, which is down there a little bit beyond the Science Center, and leave us all awash, very much like New Orleans was. So this kind of business community effort has been important to figure out and to get people mobilized about it. If you go down to the leadership and look for the board of directors, you'll see who's on the top of it. Well, there he is, Quinton Zondervan. So you think that he's only running for city council here in Cambridge, but he's got a not only a track record, but an outreach record that leaves much to be desired in other candidates. In any case, let's look what else he's interested in. He mentioned bicycles.
I did, and this is a photograph of myself and Vice Mayor Jan Devereaux, who's been a phenomenal advocate for bicycle safety on the council for the past 2 terms, and sadly is not running for re-election, and that makes it that much more important that I'm re-elected as a champion for bicycle safety in Cambridge. It's a really important aspect of our response to climate change, that we provide alternatives to cars for transportation, and unless we put in place a lot more bike lanes that are truly protected from traffic, people will not ride their bikes because they don't feel comfortable competing for road space with cars. So we've done a few really nice bike lanes in Cambridge on Vassar Street and Western Ave, Just recently, I was biking to the King School from City Hall, and so I went on Western Ave, and that was just absolutely lovely, biking on that cycle track. And then I took a right on Putnam Ave, and it was just horrible. There's no space for bikes. There's just two lanes of moving vehicles and one lane of, car storage, as I call it, and absolutely no space for a bicycle. So, we really have a lot of work to do, and that Putnam Ave, that has the King School on it, so how are kids supposed to bike to school safely? We have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, it's often been described as two types of bikers in Cambridge, the quick and the dead. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
there are a few deaths
Yeah.
here and in Boston, but the
Yeah.
lanes are a big victory.
Right, including my dear friend Paula Shiraga, who was killed in Boston last year. So it's real. It's real.
Well, in this picture, you're wearing two pins, which I see you're wearing today as
Yes.
well. And so I wondered if you could give us a brief description of these two.
Yes, so the one on my left is the Climate Reality Project. That's former Vice President Al Gore's
This one.
organization. Yeah, that's a green circle. And then the one on my right is actually the outline of Cambridge in green, and that is our logo for Green Cambridge, the organization that I headed up for many years.
Very good. Well, we mentioned the team earlier on. Do you want to say anything about the whole slate of people that seem to be running?
Yes, absolutely. So here they are. We've been working together this entire election season to make sure that we have a really strong team of candidates to present to the voters. And so we have 5 candidates for City Council, and then 1 candidate for school committee. And we all share the same values of prioritizing climate justice, racial justice, and housing justice, traffic safety. None of us accept money from developers in Cambridge that are doing business with the council, because we want you to know that we're working for you and not for them. So I hope you will give all of them a look and help build a strong team on the council that can prioritize these issues for your benefit.
Okay, well, there's his logo, campaign placard, and a reminder for you all to vote in Cambridge on Tuesday, 5 November. It's coming up. It's coming up fast.
Only 9 more days.
That's right. Even those of you who can't make it to the polling booth that day don't have an excuse, because Cambridge very generously has extended the hours for absentee voting. You can go in on Friday the 1st or Saturday the 2nd and get an absentee ballot and fill it out right there if you're not going to be in town on Tuesday and won't be here to vote. There's no excuse, basically. So, there you are. Your political alternatives, among others, are Quinton Zondervan. Thank you so much for coming along today. And remember, everybody, vote in Cambridge Tuesday the 5th. If we want to survive as a human society, our leaders need to learn, and they're starting to learn about the limits in a finite ecosystem. Fortunately, there is a new kind of alliance, a citizen science alliance, that's emerging around the world. Work together to devise a just transition to a sustainable future. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Quinton, for coming along this evening.
Thank you.